compact, but it has everything I need. I don't know if there's a tool that I could possibly not own.
You have them all.
I
Okay.
have them all, yeah. And doubles and triples of most of them.
So where do you start when you're working in the shop? Where's your starting place?
All right. The first thing I do is I see a picture. Like my daughter drew a picture of a dragon. The face was looking towards you instead of away. So I took that thing and I blew it up. I blew it up into something bigger. And I put grid lines on it. And I take graph paper and I follow the grid lines in the graph paper until I design something the size I want it to be.
All right.
And I cut it down out of there. And I take it and I put it on a piece of wood, get it a rough outline. And from there I'll bring it over to either a bandsaw or my jigsaw.
Which one's the jigsaw?
Right over here.
Oh.
And then I cut out rough shapes. After that, I'll use this tool, which has a chainsaw blade in it. Basically, it's a mini chainsaw, and you have to use it with two hands, otherwise you only have one hand left. So I take that, and then I'll start to form the wood to the thickness that I want it from something, just a big piece of stock.
Okay.
This is called yellow Osage. I got this from my son the other day. He owns a woodworking store in Magnolia, which is actually his shop right here.
Ah.
And this is another design I'm working on for a different type of dragon that I'm going to create. This was a prototype for something that's in the house. I'll show you later. I had to figure out how to make that to see if it would even work. So then I'll come over here. Most of the work is done right here at the bench. And I'll see a picture, for example, like this bull. And I'll put it on a grid line and I'll cut it all out. I'll take a block of wood for the size I'm going to want. And this was the cut-off piece in here because it was a little bit thicker.
Okay.
So I'll form this into an approximate shape I want, knowing that when it's done it's going to look like this. Actually, I'm going to raise it up about 1/4 of an inch that way. And then I'll start taking this piece of wood. And a lot of the work, once I get to this size, if I can't use this anymore, I'll switch over to the drill. And with the drill, I start to put in these bits. Like this thing. And you just start working at the wood. And you can bring it down to about any size you want. And then you start forming it with sanders, fine sanders, rough sanders. This is a 60 grit. This little thing gets in just about everywhere, nothing else will. The belt sander will bring down big pieces. And then once I get it small enough, I go back to this table and I'll start using the chisels to get it to the final shape I want. This is a picture of a cat I'm going to be working on, which is right there.
And so you have the grid.
Uh-huh. I give it a rough shape, and then I'll start working on it. This piece of driftwood, you can almost press in with your nail, but I'm going to use for this couple right there when I finish.
For which one?
The man and woman.
Ooh. So what made you decide to use that particular piece of wood? You just saw it would fit the dimensions?
I've done one thing out of driftwood. It's difficult because it's so soft.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the best woods is basswood. It has very little character, but it doesn't split, it doesn't check, it doesn't crack, it holds its shape, and it won't fall apart on you. It's just nondescript. It has no character. It has almost no grain to it. So what I prefer working with is a maple. At least it does the exact same thing, only it has a finer grain. It looks nice. A lot of the pieces inside I work with maple.
Okay.
And then I collect whatever I can, and I kind of stack them up here. The stuff I bought up in the store are up in here, and I have them all labeled. If I need to, when I make bases, I'll bring down the router table and set it up on there. If I have a lot of work to do outside, I take this stand. These tools are designed to bolt right to it. I can bring them out, put them out in the yard, and I have a big cover that goes out 20 feet on a couple of stakes, so I can work out there in the summer. And it keeps my shop from getting all messy. And I can take one or two of these fans and put them outside. It's actually a fairly cool area. It runs about 10 feet high and I have an outside area to work in.
Yeah, I mean, it's 94 degrees out and it feels pretty comfortable in here right now.
Well, once you get these fans going, and I don't have mine now because of the noise, it's kind of noisy, and I have a stereo I built in. I have a couple of speakers going out into the yard, and it's actually quite cool in here. You can come in here and you've got to hold everything down because it's all blowing out. And those fans are pretty powerful, so it makes it a nice, cool area to work. Usually when I'm doing my yard work, this is where I come to cool off. It really does with these fans going. It's nice and cool in here.
Wow. So do you listen to music when you work?
I do. I put that thing in. I ran some speakers up above, and I have 2 more speakers going into the yard. So if I'm out in the yard or out in the pool, I can just turn on some music and enjoy that.
So do you have a particular artist you like to woodwork to?
Not really. I listen to almost always country or alternative rock.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my 2 favorites. But I listen to about everything that there is at the library. If there's a CD there, I've almost surely
checked it out. Yeah.
I go there every single week. I take 4 or 5. I listen to at least one every day. And sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not.
Well, I'm glad we could help provide a soundtrack to your lovely woodwork here.
You have. So down below, excuse me.
Sir.
Down below, in here, for example, these are all the completed pieces I have done. I keep track of them, when I start them, when I finish them, the type of wood, every pattern I've ever made for anything, the rhino that's on the inside, every one I've cut out, every picture I saw that I started with, everything I've done is in here. This folder I collect just pictures I really like, things that I want to make, things that I find interesting. That will be a tough one. But I have so many ideas and so little time.
Sure.
Like this little thing. So I saved this piece of wood just to do something like that with.
Oh, I see, because of the arch.
Right.
The arc of the arms.
So this is where I keep a lot of my ideas. I also get some, well, I'll show you those in a minute. I keep brushes and paints in here. A lot of my sanding equipment in here and belt for my radial arm, or my band sander. Down below, assortment of hammers if you ever need one. In here I keep another dozen tools packed up, ready to go. I have more tools in there. I have 3 or 4 grinders to keep everything straight, different types of sanders. This is a chop saw, but it's a sliding one, so I can put in a big block of wood like this. This one just comes straight down. That comes in handy only occasionally, but when you need it, it's indispensable to drill holes nice and straight.
This 5-speed bench drill press?
Yes, yes. And I always have a dozen projects going around here like this thing.
It's birdhouse.
I'm working on it for outside. I'll mount it up in a couple of months, probably when all the birds are gone, but I get to it when I can get to it.
There's always next season, right?
Yes. So up here I keep a bunch of rags, an old stereo that got too much dust in and it went out, and a bunch of other things I need. Down below is more equipment. Up in here are a bunch of woodworking books, and I wanted to thank the library because they gave me that whole thing the other day, which comes in really handy. These are just pieces that I'm going to leave for bases or leftovers. This is interesting. This is called soapstone.
Soapstone.
And soapstone is good because you can just take a knife and carve it just like this. Wow. And if you feel it, it's called soapstone because it feels somewhat soapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So once I see something in it, and someday I will, once I see it, I'll look for pictures of it. I'll design it to fit this size, and then I'll carve it out of it.
So how long do you spend in here on average, like in a work session?
Usually I'm out here about 4:30 when I get home from work. I'm out here until around 6, probably 3 nights a week.
Okay.
And then half a day on at least Saturday or Sunday I'm out here, if not longer. So yeah, a fair amount of time, whenever I can.
Well, it's paying off. You have a lot of beautiful work to show, and you've shown it at the library, and it always gets compliments.
Well, that's great. You know, I just, it's fun, it's a hobby. Some of the pieces that you'll look at in a minute are very, very simplistic. I started, I think, my first one in about 1990. It's just in the garage one day messing around, and I think I made a penguin. Very, very abstract, doesn't have a lot of features. And over the years, I've gotten a bit more complicated. And like this thing, this took a long time to carve this out of one piece of wood. And I saw this picture on it, redesigned it. That one's almost done. I need to finish sanding it, and then I'm going to polish it up, and then it'll be done.
Wow. So you said you started it around 1990, so you were an adult. You got into it much later in life.
When I first moved to Houston, I moved here in '79, I believe.
Okay.
And became a carpenter. Had my own business for 23 years. And so I always had a bunch of wood. I was always working with it, and I just enjoyed working with wood. And I've got table saws and everything else in the other room besides the little portable ones that I carry in and out. Had a big radial arm. I had everything I need to run a small business with. And so one day I was just messing around in my garage, and I ended up making a penguin. My wife says, "Oh, that's cute." She didn't know I was going to make all these dust collectors for years. So over the years, once I made one, I got interested. I wanted to make another, and then another, and now it's just it's become a full-time hobby. So I ended up building this room. I go out and I buy whatever lumber I need. On top of in my garage attic, I have, well, I think it's going to bend the joists fairly soon, because whenever I find some wood, I store it up there, and I leave it up there for 3 or 4 years so it'll dry. A lot of it will crack because it's a slow drying process. I have a ton of sycamore, which is beautiful wood to work with, but when you dry it up in your attic like that, most of it's cracked. But I do have some. That's sycamore up there.
Which one?
This right up here. Actually, all these things with, they're all sycamores. That's what I've got here, a piece of sycamore. And I've got this thing flat, so now I can design something here. Haven't come up with a design, but I will.
So you mentioned drying it for a couple of years. Now, is there any special way you have to dry it, or you just leave it up there for a few years?
I just leave it up there for a couple of years. The problem with slow drying, it will cause it to crack. Most of the stuff you get is kiln dry, you know, at the lumber yards. They put it in a big furnace and they dry it on up, and the wood comes out nice, straight, and surface all 4 sides, kind of like that up there, and you're not going to worry about bends or anything else. But sycamore is a great wood to work with. So when I saw a neighbor taking down a tree years ago, I just took a bunch of it, and I've got a lot more of it up there. And then I've got some oak, and must be a half a dozen different kinds. So like that dead tree out there was a grapefruit tree. It got killed in the frost.
Yeah.
So I cut it all down except for that, and I'm about to take my chainsaw and cut that, and then I'll throw it all up in the garage. Because I've never carved a grapefruit wood, and I don't know how it works, so I'll learn.
So you mentioned liking sycamore wood. How do you pick out, or what qualities do you like in a piece of wood? What do you look for in a piece of wood that you know it'll be good for woodworking?
I don't. I've learned, but I didn't in the beginning. Most of the time I look for a piece of wood, I look for the color.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if I want to do something in a dark, I'll pull out something dark, or I'll go buy a piece, or I'll see what I've got hanging around here. If I need a small piece, I have a box right behind this long beam that all my cutoffs are back there. So I'll just reach in there. I need small pieces. But most of the time it's by color.
Okay.
Like this. I don't know how well this is going to work. I really don't. It's a beautiful piece of wood, but it's already starting to split on me. I have some woods that will, as you start to carve them, they'll just fall off because they break along the grain lines easy. I know my son makes cutting boards and cheese boards and all kinds of small things like that, and he uses this, and it works great when you clamp it together. How it carves, I'm about to find out. I could end up saying a lot of bad words because if it falls apart, I'll be very upset. But you know, it's part of the learning process. You learn with different woods.
So you kind of go with the flow. You never know how the wood is going, or that particular piece of wood is going to react. It's not all master planned.
Of them, like the basswoods, the maples, and some of the others I've worked with a lot, I know how they're going to react. So I know which way to run the grain when I'm going to carve something. But a lot of the newer pieces of wood like this, or some of the exotics that I have up in here, like the one on the top that's light colored on the end, and it's a dark piece of wood on the very top.
Yeah.
Now that's a 1x4. It's only 4 foot long, I cannot pronounce the name, although it's written on the side. It's from Africa, and it was, I think, $98 for one piece of wood.
Wow.
You can buy this thing for $25. You can make 40 carvings out of it. But this is an extremely unique piece of wood. It's absolutely gorgeous to look at. The grain is amazing. It's extremely hard. So I have one or two in the house I've made out of bloodwood and some other exotics I'll show you in a minute.
Ooh.
And you'll see when you look at them, it's just very unique when you're done. It's worth the money sometimes to get something that's exotic. Some of them are nice, but there's not character. And I don't paint them, I don't stain them, I always leave them natural.
Really?
Most of my wood is called stylized, which means it doesn't have a lot of features. Some of them I put a lot of features in, like I'll do a horse, and the whole horse is, well, I'll have to show you. You'll see the horse, but I try to put a face on it. Or I'll do a dog that looks like a dog, but I'll make it look not like a dog, but I'll put features on it, you know? So I always try to add one or two things to it. Most of the stylized pieces have very little. It's a thing you look at and say, oh, hey, yeah, that's a dog, you know? It's supposed to be like that.
Yeah, that, in a way that's more artistic. You're blending the abstract with the representational, and it makes the viewer kind of have to contemplate it a little bit.
But a few of them, I try to make them. I've got probably, I think the rhino is probably the one with the most detail and the hardest one to do. Some of them I look at and I'll spend months on. I have one probably sat on my bench for over 3 years before I carved the big piece, and I couldn't decide what to do about the rest. And one day after 3 years, I said to myself, you know, I can put this thing like a circus act. And so then I needed a mouse for it. And I looked at the old Ed Sullivan show that I grew up with, and they had Topo Gigio the mouse, so I printed out a picture of Topo Gigio, and that's what I carved for the mouse, to go with the hippopotamus. But I have fun with this. Pieces of wood I wanted to try a shape on. This was interesting. This was a 1x8. I had it on a job site, left over. I simply took my saw and cut it, and took my chisels, put grooves in it, and then you very carefully separate it, and it's a book holder.
Ooh, for cookbooks, or
out of one piece of wood. And it's extremely trying when you go to separate this for the very first time. Wood naturally isn't subdivided like that. So, finished pieces. They go from the fairly simple ones. This is one of my very earliest ones. Most all of them are going to have dates when I make it. If there's 2 or 3 around here that don't have dates, because in the beginning I was just kind of messing around. They were a lot like this, but I never put a number on them. And after that I started to write down when I made it, how long it took me to make it, the type of wood, that sort of thing. Sometimes I see a shape. I like this because it was one continuous line that went all the way around, and I just thought it was unique.
That's really cool.
And these things over here, rhinoceros.
Oh, look at the detail on that. Is this the one that took you a couple of years on the bench? Or?
No, this one was, it took me start to finish about 6 months. This, I learned to fix my mistakes. It broke right here. And when it broke and it was laying on the ground and I stopped crying so much, I realized that I could never put it back and make it look original. So when I put it back, I used a wood filler, but I added a couple more lines to make it look like it's supposed to be like that. So a lot of these pieces have breaks in them, and when they do, I try to use that break to make a different element on it. This thing actually was a lot more difficult to make than that thing right there. That one looks more difficult.
It does.
This one was a lot more difficult for me to make.
What was the challenge in working with the shape, or?
It's working with the shape, trying to conceptualize it as you work with it. I wanted this beak to come out a certain way, and it's difficult on a piece of wood. It's like this horse. You can see the horse, although it doesn't really look like a horse, but I did put a face on it. I put horseshoes on the back of it. And then sometimes I get them done, and I spend as much time trying to make a stand because I don't know how I'm going to make it stand up so I can show it.
That's marvelous. Wow.
And I mentioned outside the driftwood, this is the only other thing I've made out of driftwood. It's extremely light. It weighs just a few ounces. This is mother with child. Hey, Put. Hi. This is my daughter, Kristen.
Hey, Kristen.
She influences me. You'll see one of her pieces of work in there too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, are you talking about the whale?
The whale.
Yeah, that's very embarrassing.
Hey, let's see the whale. Come on.
Wait 1 second. Okay. These are 4 fish.
Okay.
So to kind of, you got to put them on a stand. So I put some pieces of metal, drill them on in, and then kind of hid most of the metal with rocks so they look like they're actually swimming. But you influenced me on the dragon too.
Oh yeah.
So the whales. So I made this whale. My daughter liked it so much because she kept saying, "Look at the little blowhole."
Yeah.
And so she was in school at the time, and she made that whale.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat too.
I don't even know if that's a whale.
It
We're
is
gonna
a
go
whale.
with whale. And then I thought that was so unique that I made a smiling whale. So he's smiling at you. And this is the cutoff piece. I told you I looked down on the ground. And when I looked down, I said, look, there's a mouth, there's an eye, it looks just like a whale. The only thing I did was I sanded over the edges and made them smooth, and I curved the tail back. And this was 20 minutes and then some finish. Wow. It's not really a carving, but I thought it looked unique. It went on the whale shelf.
The whale shell.
It kind of fit.
Oh, this is quite a display. Let me get some distance.
So this one was a gift from my daughter. This had a unique history because as I was carving it one day, the leg fell off. And then I put it back, and then the other leg fell off, and eventually both other legs fell off. And so I finally had it all done, and I was trying to find a way to mount it because I knew that things were falling off, and that's when the head fell off.
Oh no.
And so this is actually 5 pieces I'll put back together, and right there, my daughter's initials.
Oh.
Because I gave it to her on her birthday. But this was the one that I told you about was in the back of a truck window.
Oh, okay.
In the truck window they had a feather floating in here. I couldn't have a piece of wood floating, so I just brought that thing on up. But I thought it was unique. This was unique in that when I was building it, I was going to have both sides come out like this. Except as I did it and I was chopping the wood, the whole piece fell off. So I ended up redesigning and just bringing that flipper down, and those two went over like that. So they all kind of have stories. That one, the whole thing broke in half, so we don't touch it again. This is unique because it was done out of one solid piece of wood. It took about forever because I was so afraid of the legs breaking off. But this I can't remember how long it took, but it took quite some time to get it all done. Wow. This is a very early one. Probably going to have a number on it from like 1990 something, the same with that one. This was one of the very first ones I ever did because it doesn't have a number on it. That's one of the fastest ones I did. Again, I gave that for my daughter for Christmas. This is the one I told you took 3 years.
Oh, yeah. Let me get the face on that one.
That's unique. I got to show you this. Because I actually put teeth on them. I don't know, that shows. I just, how many hippos, have teeth. So, but when I finished the hippo, it sat outside for a long time, and I had it exactly the way I wanted, but it kept kind of falling over on its chin, and I didn't want that. So one day I decided to make it look like a circus, and that's when I did Topo Gigio the mouse, and he's training him to get up on that stand. That was a gift from my wife for our anniversary.
Oh. It's beautiful.
This one was the one I told you that has the most detail on it. I use a certain type of wood. See, some of them really polish up a lot. This one, not so much. You just got to be really careful about the little ears and horns. They bust off easy.
While you're carving them?
Yeah. This was one of the exotic woods I told you about. This is called bloodwood. See, these things don't have a lot of... This is why I like this wood, because it has character on it. Some of the other woods, like this, don't have much character. Especially that. I mean, it's a nice piece of wood. It finishes out well, but it doesn't have
that
any
richness
grain to it. Yeah. So that's why I got this. This is like the other one. It was $100 1x4. And I glued together two of them. There's a seam right in here to get the width I want. And so I've got more of the bloodwood out there for another piece. This was a sycamore log. And this took, I kept turning this thing this way and that way, so because it drove me crazy trying to get a snake that was curled up. Never did that before. And
now, did you display that one at the library, or did you have another snake? I remember seeing a cobra or some sort of snake at...
I had another one. I have a couple of snakes. I've given a few to my daughter, given some to my son, one or two of the other family members. I've sold a few. Most of them I keep around here. And over on this side by the piano, we have the butterfly.
Oh. That. How long did that take?
That one took a while. That one has 2 or 3 broken pieces on it. Very carefully put back.
I think I see one of them right there.
That's it.
Yeah. But I mean, you have to be super
Sometimes
close
you
to
modify it. If it comes out, you know, you just take it out or find a way to put it back. This was actually an older piece. We've had it for 10 years now. Got creative on it. This is just a stylized piece I wanted to make.
What inspired that? Was it a photo or?
Yeah, I saw a picture of it. And this, I wanted to make, always wanted to make something fly, and I couldn't. So I got some wood and made a little jig and cut little tiny thin strips, and I bent the wood to make the stand. And then that was the prototype outside to see if I could do it. And then this thing simply balances right there.
Whoa.
A balance on anything. It's just unique because you got to have
sorry.
the floor right here.
Oh. How does that work? How does it?
You got to have the weight in front of the nose equal the weight in the back of the nose.
Oh, okay. And these things protruding outward help balance that. I see.
So when I first did it, this was about that long.
And
then I just took 1/4 of an inch at a time until it was finally balanced, and then I sanded it all out. Just to make sure that I'd rather have it longer and cut down and too short in the back than it's going flopping over. There's no good way to fix it.
Well, thank you for showing us your handiwork, and sooner or later you will be back in the display case at the library so folks can check it out at their leisure.
That'd be cool. I'm glad you came over. It's fun. It's a hobby, and my wife makes me dust them all the time. And I don't blame her. It's all right. They do collect a lot of dust. They're a lot of fun.